So now we'll be understanding and learning about what is constitutionalism and the salient features of the Constitution of India. So now, Kamal, if you observe now what it's like we'll understand what is the meaning of constitutionalism, how rule of law it is basically applicable, and what is the salient features of constitution. We'll be going one by one. So this is one of the basics which we need to know while we are learning the entire constitution, entire provisions and sections when you're going to deal with especially in terms of article analysis, or if you're going to learn anything in future, especially if you are trying to learn about administrative services or any kind of general laws you're trying to learn. Constitution is a primordial pillar for it, so it's like a mother for all the other laws to come into an existence. So any law you see in our country now which is coming parallelly, it could be our labor law, it could be our environmental law, the main mother law is what? The main mother law is a constitutional law. From that mother law, other particular laws are basically being originated. So now let's see what do you mean by the term called as constitutionalism. So through understanding the meaning of constitutionalism, we'll understand the meaning of constitution bit by bit. So now this can be an expected, how much I expected 6 mark question to you. Okay, what is constitutionalism as well as, yeah, what do you mean by the constitutionalism as well as what is rule of law according to you? See, the constitutionalism means, see, there are three important bodies. Which are the three important bodies in our country? Legislative, executive, judiciary, three bodies. Now these three bodies, just imagine if the legislative and executive have complete powers, do you think a country will run properly? No. Legislative will take their own decisions, executive will take their own decisions, they can violate the rules of the citizens of the country, they can violate the fundamental rights, so that should not happen. That's the reason we have something called as constitutionalism. Okay, so constitutionalism, who is basically responsible of maintaining it? That is our judiciary. Okay, so it is basically providing a limitations on the power of government. It is telling that, see, just imagine if I am the complete college university leader and if I have complete power to do what and all, if I get the complete power to do as I wish, will my entire college university work properly? No, I have my own limitations over there. The people like HOD will come over there, dean will come over there, my teachers will come over there, they'll constantly check me. So similar way, to check on the powers of legislative and executive, we have limitations of the power of government, and who's taking it? Our judiciary is checking it. Now it basically checks and balances on the powers of the government. Checks and balances, what are the checks here? The judiciary will check what are the checks and balances. If they feel that any law which is being bought by legislative is violating the constitutional principles, then immediately they'll try to strike down that particular law through what? Through judicial review and judicial activism. Okay, so judicial review, judicial activism, like High Court and Supreme Court has a complete power. If they look into any particular statute of legislation, if they feel that that particular act is basically violating fundamental rights, then yes, absolutely you can what? Strike strike down that entire law. So here it shows the limited power of the government and absolute power and restrained balance. So this is called as constitutionalism. Okay, so it's like showing an absolute power and restrained balance. It is creating a balance within the governance. That is called as constitutionalism. So constitutionalism, if they're going to ask you for exam, you're going to think on five important things, six important things: limitations on the power of the government. It keeps checks and balances. Judicial review and judicial review, activism is a tool for basically controlling it. Now limited power of the government and absolute power of the government. Absolute power of the government is basically being controlled. Now what do you mean by the rule of law? Rule of law principle means what? Everyone is equal under the eye of the law. For example, if I'm the prime minister, if I'm the president, still everyone is equal under the eye of the law. If they commit a mistake, they'll also be punishable. If a poor person commit a mistake, they'll also be punishable. So nobody is above the law. So rule of law is basically been uplifted through the pillar of constitutionalism. So this is an important aspect which we can understand from what is rule of law as well as constitutionalism. So now let's understand about what are the salient features of constitution. Now I'll just use this pen so it'll be easy for you to understand. So now in our salient features of our constitution is one of the most lengthiest written constitution. And how many articles do we have? We have 448 articles. We have 25 parts and 12 schedules. Okay, remember, we have 448 articles, we have 25 parts and 12 schedules. Now in our constitution, we have very important features for it. First one is about sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic, and republic. Okay, so I'll start with sovereign. Sovereign states that not controlled by other countries. So our India, is it controlled by any other country? Before, when Britishers used to control, we could have been said that it is not a sovereign state, but now it is a sovereign state, not controlled by other countries. Socialist. So now before, we are changing from police state to the welfare state. So now if you observe here, our entire governance ka function, especially the constitution, very clearly speaks about the welfare mechanism of the people. Okay. Now, sovereign, socialist, secular. Secular means what? Do we have any official religion? We, the religion of Pakistan, would like to continue on. We're not like Pakistan's this one. Pakistan, Islam is their official religion. But here in India, do we have any official religion? No. Nowhere in constitution you cannot find it. Okay. So state has no official religion. SR Bommai versus Union of India case mein, it was very clearly said that secularism is part of basic structure of Indian constitution. It's one of the basic structure of Indian constitution. We'll be learning about basic structure later, but for the time being, understand that secularism, it was said that what is basically part of basic structure of constitution. Now, democracy. In democracy, it's like voting rights. See, everyone gets a voting rights after 18. Similar way, voting, government delivers authority from the will of the people. Remember, in a democracy, we are giving our authority to the government to decide. So that democracy system is there. Is there any dictatorship like we're following what was happening in Germany? No. Now, head of the state is basically being elected, and there is indirect elections also. Now, remember, these are the two important points, not two important points. I think we covered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 points over here. Lengthiest written constitution, sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic, and republic. Okay. Now let's look into the next important salient features concept. That is about our we have a parliamentary form of government. Remember, guys, we always have this parliamentary form of the government in which president is the constitutional head of the state. So who is the constitutional head of the state? Head of the government is who? That is the prime minister. Head of constitutional parliament is a form of a government. Under this, president is the constitutional head of the state. Executive derives its power, like executive powers are basically with the prime minister and the council of ministers, and the government is responsible for the legislation, and legislation can be removed through no confidence motion. You have seen this movie, right? Legislation, for example, ruling government, BJP government, we can remove it through whom? Through no confidence motion. They have to prove no confidence motion, and that is not possible easily. But yes, congress government side, there was congress government during Vajpayee time and all, there was even many times, no confidence motion ka proposition also was passed many times. So in our country itself, no confidence motion can be was passed many times. So no confidence motion, we can entirely dissolve the house, but you have to get majority votes to remove them. That is another part of the story. Now, fourth important aspect is procedure for the amendment. We have article 368 which speaks about amending provisions. So guys, what is amending provisions? So we can amend the constitution what through what? Under powerful tool of article 368. Okay, so three types of we have voting also, especially in terms of amending. One is amending means, I mean, like we require voting for this one. It could be like simple majority voting, special majority, and absolute majority. Just do learn this, but about this explanation I can go detail on the upcoming days, but for the time being, let's understand the salient features. Now we also have about, in our constitution, we uplift the part of fundamental rights and fundamental duties, okay, as well as DPSP. Now what do you mean by fundamental rights? So guys, fundamental rights are very simple. It is coming under part 3 of the Constitution of India. Okay, here the state is responsible for protecting the fundamental rights, and state should not violate it, and in case if they're violating it, through judicial review we can catch hold of them. Okay, so if any act is passed in the parliament and it is violating the constitution, then we can catch hold of it through judicial review. Now what do you mean by fundamental duties? So how many duties do we have? We have 11 fundamental duties, and one of the, actually we had 10. Okay, so 42nd amendment only we got this, actually one of the last fundamental duty we changed it. So one of the last duty which was added recently was about right to education, and we got this idea of fundamental duty from USSR constitution. Okay, now the part 4 is the state is incorporate principle. Okay, now remember, I wanted to understand this concept about fundamental DPSP, directive principles of state policy. See, directive principles of state policy, in a simple language, it is providing a guidelines for the state government on how they need to implement certain kind of aspects. Now this is coming under part 4 of the Constitution of India, and it is not enforceable in court of law. Remember, it is not enforceable in the court of law. Along with that, state is incorporating the principles of welfare. So this is fundamental rights we learned, fundamental duties, and DPSP we could understand it. Now, what do you mean by rigidity and flexibility? Our constitution is considered to be little rigid and flexible. So it is not that rigid, as it is neither very rigid or neither very flexible in nature. Okay, so rigid, if you observe in American constitution, it is very difficult to basically even amend their constitution. Is very rigid, it is very tough procedure, whereas it is not that easy and flexible as the British constitution. So they do not, it's like an unwritten constitution only for them, but it is not that easy as a British constitution to amend it. So it is basically an amalgamation of both. That means we have a rigid as well as flexible system. It's a mixture of both. because certain provisions we can remove, we cannot remove it. For example, rigid constitution and flexible, we can understand two different aspects. Now, next important point is, in our constitution we uplift the aspect of independent judiciary. So guys, in constitutionalism I explained very clearly the role of judiciary to make a checks and balances. So that is basically uplifted by what? Independent judiciary. And advisory jurisdiction, see guys, the president is bound to get advice by the Supreme Court. For example, if any particular matter advice is required, president, even in Ray Barbary case also it was said that president has the right to get advice from the Supreme Court, but certain time they can also refuse it. Supreme Court can also refuse it. And if any advice is given by the Supreme Court towards me as a president, it is not required for me to follow it. That is also there. So this advisory jurisdiction is also there. Now, next last important aspect about our Sailent feature is about judicial review, guys. So judicial review, I want to understand that what is judicial review? It's very simple. I am a legislator. Okay. I've passed out any particular law or any particular act which states that from tomorrow onwards, no person should come out of their home. Just imagine. Okay. Now, court can intervene and strike out that entire article stating that what? It is going against the principle of constitution. It is going against the principle of fundamental rights. So, judicial review, especially two important cases we'll understand. A Keshavananda Bharati versus State of Kerala case mein, so High Court and Supreme Court decides constitutional validity and provisions of the statutes. If violate, then they can strike down the law. In Keshavananda Bharati case, this was even highlighted. Whereas in L. Chandrakumar versus Union of India case, mein, judicial review was part of the basic structure of the constitution. This was upheld. You can learn two case laws. One is Keshavananda Bharati of versus State of Kerala. In this, it was said that High Court, Supreme Court can decide constitutional validity and provisions of certain kind of statutes. As well as L. Chandrakumar versus Union of India case, what they say, judicial review is part of what? It is part of the basic structure of the constitution. So guys, that's all for today's video. If you do like it, please do like, share and subscribe, and do let me know your views in the comments so that I can post even more videos. That's all. Take care. Goodbye. Wish you all the best.